Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's your friend Dom C, and we are back for another episode of the State of the Franchise. This time we dip down into the Dirty South, and we're going to touch on the Atlanta Falcons right after this. We are back again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's your friend Dom C of Project Prospect here with another episode of the State of the Franchise. We're going to take a deep dive with every team's and every team's insider to discuss the ongoings for that particular team. As I said, today we're going to dip down into the NFC South. We're going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. New regime. Possibly new quarterback, a lot of changes in front of us for the Atlanta Falcons. Before I bring on our guest for the podcast, let me clean up a little housekeeping. If you haven't done so, please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. The channel on YouTube is at Project Prospect with Dom C. It helps me out a ton, helps the YouTube algorithm bump me up the rung so I can get my content out to the masses. If you like draft content, 365, 24/7, this is your spot. Amongst this podcast, we also have the Draft Dodgers, where we deep dive into positions, players, talk to scouts and stuff like that for every single draft cycle. Right now, we're in the heat of it, man. 2024 draft cycle is upon us. I also have a new 7-round mock draft coming out. That mock draft series is now touching on the New England Patriots, so expect that soon. Again, if you haven't done so, please like, subscribe, and follow. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. If you like this video and want to show some friendly discourse, get in the comments. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you didn't like. Tell my co-host what you like and what you don't like, and I'm sure we'll make sure we get back to you. But without further ado, let me bring on Clint Goss. Clint, welcome to State of the Franchise. How are you, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And those who don't know, Clint is a writer with Stadium Rant, and he also does a Falcons radio show on WDJY. Did I get that right? 99.1 FM. Clint, tell us a little bit about your background and, your Falcon fanism, if you will.
Yeah. As far as the Falcons fandom, probably about 20 years deep at this point. I've been kind of following along since probably 02-ish. When I was a younger kid. Have gotten more into it, even more so since I've moved into the Atlanta area versus Southwest Georgia. So that's been fun. But, as far as, writing and covering the team, this last season was really my first year having the radio show covering the team with my co-host, Jordan Watkins. And that's just been a huge success from the jump. And we've had a lot of fun doing that. So that's kind of my main Falcons coverage right now is at 99.1 and Stadium Rant, really primarily doing draft coverage over there. That's kind of my main geekdom along with Falcons football.
Yeah, as it is mine. So I can get down with that, Clint. So listen, as a Falcons insider and someone who has their finger on the pulse of what's going on, obviously, Arthur Smith is gone. New regime is in town. Why don't we just start right there? Kind of give us, your quick high-level overview of what happened last year, why the change was made, or maybe why you think it was necessary. And then before we get into the new regime, so on and so forth, why don't we touch on what happened last year with Falcons?
Last year, I think it can be, pretty quick and pretty simple. You put together a top 10 defense. You put together a top 10 conversation, top 5 offensive line, primarily on the interior. You have skill players, the caliber of Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. One of the stronger special teams units in the league that doesn't get enough credit. Mm-hmm. And you flushed all of it by having possibly the worst quarterback in the league and the worst head coach in the league, respectfully. And I think it's as simple as that. And those were very quickly recognized areas for change. And I think it's pretty simple. That's the two biggest areas for change. I mean, yeah, we'll go into further. We need a receiver too and beyond. We need another safety in that rotation. We need some help on the defensive interior. Going to have to make some additions to prepare for a scheme change defensively. But there's no question about it. The number one need is a quarterback, and we're confident starting out here with Raheem Morris as the new head coach. But yeah, no, there's no need to be coy about it. Our quarterback play was probably the worst in the league.
Well, you know what? Covering and being a Jets fan and covering the Jets like I do, I know what bad quarterback play looks like. So, I feel your pain, brother. I feel your pain. But you mentioned Raheem Mostert. So why don't we dive in there? Like, your thoughts on the selection of Raheem Mostert? I mean, and first off, but let me backtrack first. I respect and I have to agree wholeheartedly on your assessment of your team. You got skill position guys. The offensive line is criminally underrated. I can't say too much. I mean, just being full disclosure, I don't know or didn't really study or watch your defense well enough to estimate where they fell along in the ranks. But I digress because you got a whole new staff in here right now. So why don't you first touch on Raheem Mostert and that selection? Were you surprised? Were you happy? What does he bring that you think Falcons fans can look forward to?
Well, first, I think you got caught up with the sound alike. You said Raheem Mostert. It's Raheem Morris.
Oh,
yeah.
You know what, dude? I do that all the time. We have, Al Woods, defensive tackle for us Jets. You know how many times I've called him Al Harris in the past, man? It's crazy. So I apologize about that, fans. It is Raheem Morris, not Mostert.
Yeah, but, getting back to it, as far as was I surprised or not, absolutely not. I didn't get too geeked up in the whole Belichick Kool-Aid that got poured very quickly early on. I was not surprised by Raheem. And, I was kind of initially in that crowd of hearing of some of the younger offensive guys, the Ben Johnsons of the world, the Bobby Slokes of the world, but always knew Raheem was kind of around there. I think for me, I might have overthought the concept of he's been in this building before. Maybe if it didn't line up the first time, why is it going to line up now? But I ended up being wrong there. And that was one reason that it did line up, was the familiarity there with Arthur Blank, the owner, first.
Yep.
And then a lot of people already in that building. And, in terms of people that have been retained. And, I was very happy with it. I think everyone, any hire, there's going to be naysayers.
Yeah, sure.
But I think in terms of the mass of this fan base, everyone's very excited. I think that Arthur Blank was not really in a position to do something with this hire that the masses wouldn't be excited about and would not turn out for. This is not a franchise that can respectfully afford to lose the fans, and doesn't really can't really stand on the fact that they've sold a good product the last few years. They're kind of in a place with this head coaching hire and this quarterback search of, you've got to show you took a big swing. You've got to have something that the fans are excited about. You can't give me we think Desmond Ritter's going to work kind of thing. You need a splash. You need some flavor. And I think Raheem really was that for this fan base. So, no, I'm very excited about it. And I think it was the right hire in hindsight.
Gotcha. So, new, young, innovative on his defense, but I think the biggest, not the biggest. I mean, obviously Raheem Morris, not Mostert. I almost said it again. Raheem Morris is going to be a big addition. I think he's going to, invigorize a lot of the staff and the team, and kind of, just like I said, bring new light. Interesting, you brought Zach Robinson over from the Rams as well. Now, Arthur Blank was unique. I mean, West Coast style, base tendency offense. Obviously, the Rams ran the same thing. A lot more different looks. I mean, I think the Rams last year ran, the most 11 personnel out of anybody in the league. So they got 3 wide receivers out there a lot of the time. So, there's going to be some personnel changes and tweaks there. But what can you tell me about Zach Robinson and what schematic changes do you think he'll bring in for the betterment of the Falcons and the skill position players they have there now?
Well, you really set me up with a nice kind of transition, a segue there, and an easy start. It kind of be a big old gut job of the 12 personnel we saw so often with Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
The whole two tight end set, you saw that. Forget the $6.5 million cap savings you had letting Jonnu Smith go in the last day or two. That was also in large part to bye-bye to the 12 personnel. We're going to be going to a lot more 3 receiver sets. And like I said earlier, when I was kind of previewing some of the more, I hate to say basic needs, but beyond the franchise quarterback, basic needs, I mentioned a wide receiver 2 and beyond. I think that's obviously going to have to be an area of emphasis, with respect to the current wide receiver room. You cannot trot Mac Hollins out there in 11 personnel the majority of your offensive scheme as a wide receiver 2. You can't trot Kadarius Hodge out there as a receiver 3 and the Scotty Millers of the world, respectfully. Can't do it, particularly if you're going to have a young quarterback in here. So, I mean, you don't have to be a draft expert knowing what we know now before the free agency period and knowing, who we add there to know that in these first 3 or 4 picks, Atlanta's got to have a slot receiver, got to have a receiver 2-3 kind of caliber talent. That one, particularly with the addition of Robinson, tying that back, he's going to have some more. I'm obviously not in the rooms for those discussions.
Sure.
But I can imagine he's already looked at them and been like, that's not going to cut it, boss.
Yeah. So, while you're talking about some of the personnel here, I brought up, courtesy of our lads, the current roster as it stands right now. And obviously, we're recording this before free agency has started, obviously before the draft has started. So, how it looks now is not how it might look 2 weeks from now. We know that, so on and so forth. But, you right away mentioned the wide receivers. And if you look here on the roster here, if you look here, you have the guys in orange are currently not under contract. Now, could some of those guys be brought back? I'm sure they could without looking, too deep into the names. But there's definitely some holes. Now, I always thought this was an interesting thing. Again, I'm fancy myself a pretty deep draft nerd. And, as I'm going through this and going through exercises and talking about other teams outside of the Jets, obviously we know quarterback is a real need. And I say that with no disrespect. It just is,
Our quarterback room sucks. There's your disrespect.
Fair enough. But you look at the wide receiver room and you only have one guy under contract after next season. So, I think that there's going to be, obviously, it's going to be a focal point, not only come April in the draft, but probably through free agency as well, because you're not going to fill 3-4 slots in just the draft. So it's going to be an area of interest for Falcons fans on both the free agent level and in the draft. So outside of that, when you look at some of the stuff, you have some depth spots and in the offensive line that probably need to be taken care of. I'm curious to see how Zach Robinson uses Kyle Pitts. Is he more of, because they did utilize the tight end to an extent over there with the Rams, but do you utilize him in that same role there? Do you see him more wide, split out big Y a little bit, a little bit more, again, I agree with you. Gone are the days of the constant heavy sets or 12, 13 personnels. I'm assuming if Zach Robinson is taking anything that he had from the Rams. And then you move to the defensive side. Again, 2 starters, as they're listed here on our lads, need to be either re-signed or replaced. Calais Campbell, the big nasty, getting up there in age. I know that, he chose Atlanta. He wanted to be part of that when he chose to come down there. So maybe you can fill us in on what the vibe is or what the buzz is around guys like him. And Bud Dupree, I don't even know if I got to be honest with you, full disclosure, I still thought he was on Tennessee. I didn't even know he came to Atlanta. So I'll let you touch on the defensive side of the pieces here.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot to uncover there. I'd have to pick a spot to start. We can go defense since you said it.
Yeah.
I think you could start with Calais. This is purely speculatory. I think he's back one more year. I think he wants to, and I think bringing in a players coach, quite frankly, the ultimate players coach in Ra, is going to make that an even easier sell. I say this respectfully. I think if Arthur Smith got him excited, Raheem Morris is going to get him excited.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of, I think he's about 38 years old, but he performed well for us last year, setting an edge and having. I say that we had to have some interior minutes out of him as well, but I think he's back. To your comment about Bud Dupree, I'll be honest with you, he had a nice stretch there down the stretch for us.
Yeah.
He really did, and I understand we are not a strong pass rushing team. Made a humongous jump last year. We nearly doubled our production, going from about 22 to 40 sacks under Ryan Nielsen, but that's a lot of growth, but there's still a lot of room to go.
Yeah.
But he really had a nice little stretch for us. He's really the person that I would have as a question mark in terms of retention for next year. He had a $3 million hit last year for perspective. We'll see on that one. That'd be a question mark. Looking defensively, more of the questions are on offense.
Yeah.
We'll see. Jeff Okudah. I had a couple names on here.
Yeah. Talk about.
I had a name. I had a section I called notable on here in terms of people in retention. I had Jeff Okudah. Probably think he's a goner. Bud Dupree, I had a question mark. Said that one was really the confusing one to me. And Calais, I think he's back. So I really gave you a little bit of chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla flavor there with 3 different answers. But I think that I'd feel confident in those. There's no doubt in my mind I'd be the most confident about Calais. But it is kind of nice that defense is set up, and you could tie that into our cap situation with that defense going forward the next few years. Really great foundation, and that's going to get even more interesting. And I'd end here before I get on a tangent. That's going to be even more interesting, say, if we make a move like go get a Kirk Cousins or a Justin Fields, and we go into this draft excited to bring a pass rusher into here. It could really get interested in terms of setting up this defense for the next few years.
Yeah.
And the last statement I would say is just, Terry Fontenot is always going to be trying to go from free agency to the draft, setting himself up in a position for best player available with those first few picks. He's shown that. Was Kyle Pitts the best player available at 4? Probably not in hindsight, but he was to them. They took him regardless of the positional value. Did the same thing with Bijan at 8. They're not afraid to do that. And he's going to do himself. You made the point. I know we're talking about defense, but just to tie it out, you made the point about you're not going to be able to go get 3 or 4 receivers in the draft. That's the perfect example of they're going to have an addition or 2 in free agency at receiver. So they're not in a position they have to press and reach for a receiver in the draft if they feel they need to wait. Or say use that second round pick, for example, can kind of hone in on saying, we've already kind of gotten more of that foundational wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3. We're going to gun for the 2 here. So he's going to give himself flexibility. You set up that point well for me.
Yeah, great. Listen, and you talked about it earlier, and one more touch on the defense. You talked about adding another safety in the room. Now, Jesse Bates is a big money. He was a big catch. What was it? Last year was his first year in Atlanta, right? He was a big money free agent.
4 years, $64 million.
Yeah, and I happen to really like Richie Grant. I see him here on the depth chart behind the rookie from last year from Alabama, DeMarco Hellmans. But did that role switch? Was Richie Grant the starter and lost his job to Hellmans?
Yeah. Richie is this year heading into the final year of his rookie deal. Year 3. He had that safety 1 role in year 2 after a developmental year as a rookie. Got bumped down this year to that safety 2 role. got paired with, who I believe to be the best safety in the NFL, and Jesse Bates. And, in my opinion, Richie underperformed this year. I think Richie is somebody who's not going to be a second contract guy. I think that, you saw that enough. I mean, if you're a second rounder in terms of invested draft capital and you're getting replaced by the rookie seventh rounder, that's probably not a good sign for you. And I say that to say, unless Raheem and his staff come in here and it's some, wow, I've had an epiphany moment. I see this being his last year serving in a rotational role. And I think Helms takes that spot unless there's an addition. And I don't see that. I think money's going to get spent elsewhere. I think they're going to give Helms a go. I think he had a good run last year. Kind of what they need, kind of a hard-hitting little thumper, loves contact. He kind of came in. I thought he was really brought in to be the special teams dean, and that was kind of his shtick.
Yep.
Coming in the draft, and I think he's just somebody that just kind of bought in and has been a good fit. And lastly, I'd say, kind of helps when you're paired up with Jesse Bates.
Yeah. So, I think you made a good point. That they're probably not, maybe they bring somebody in, but it's probably not going to be shopping in the first or the second tier. You're not going to see and I'm just throwing names out, hypothetical names, like say Buda Baker comes on the market, gets cut loose. They're spending $15-16 million on.
I'll give you a name, a cheap name, Jeremy Chin. Somebody who's a little past their prime, somebody we're very familiar with in Carolina.
Yeah,
but paired up as a 2 with Jesse Bates, somebody on a very short, low risk contract, high upside. That'd be a name in free agency that I think is very realistic. To add to your point of, that's not going to be a big spin position because you've already done that.
Yeah, exactly.
And hey, with this salary cap increase, that 4 year, $64 million a year, 4 year, $64 million in total, 16 a year AAV, that looks even sweeter because he far exceeded that for us this year. So no, that's not going to be a big one, and I don't think that's a spot where you're taking someone, say late day 2, day 3, hoping that they can be that guy, because you did that with Helms last year with the developmental day 3 guy. So no, I don't think safety will be a spot in the draft necessarily, really, unless it's just someone they can't say no to from a depth position.
Gotcha. And then moving to the offense real quick. All right, we've already touched on the wide receivers, and that's a need. It's definitely something that's going to be addressed. Again, I'm looking just by this depth chart. You're going to need to probably, whether it's through free agency, lower level, or draft developmental guys, you're going to have to add some depth to a very good starting offensive line. Jake Matthews and Matthew Bergeron, what a great pairing on that left side. Who knows what they're going to do at the tight end position? I'm assuming they're not going to carry a fullback as well. So there's going to be some mix and match. An interesting one, Cordarrelle Patterson. I know he's a little bit old, probably, seeing his best days, but he definitely, still played a role. I don't know how much of that juice he's got left, but correct me if I'm wrong, he was your mainstay in, kick and punt returns as well. Are you looking necessarily to add another back? Are you a fan of Tyler Algier as the backup to the big dog Bijan?
Yeah, starting with the running back discussion there, I'm very high on Algier. I admittedly was lower on him coming out of the draft than I should have been. But since he's gotten in the building, very high on him, and he's in such a perfect position. I mean, running back 2 expectations for him as a guy who's a 1,000-yard rusher as a rookie. Hello, yes, please.
Yeah.
He's a great fit there and a great compliment with Bijan. To the comment about CP, I fear he's possibly gone. I think he is. When I think of somebody who is the most Falcon, and I think you know what I mean by that.
Sure. For real. It's going to be hard to see him in another uniform for sure.
You say you're a Jets man. Like when you think of a Jet, you're thinking of a Revis or somebody who's all about the Jet. You think of that it's like when I think of the Falcons and kind of the locker room and the leader and somebody the fans connect with and puts an effort in connecting with the fans and the media, it's CP, and he's really recognizable league wide. And that aspect of it would be hard to separate. But I just don't know that in a running back 3 role at this point he's going to be a fit this year. I'd like to see him from a locker room standpoint. I still think he's got some juice, with running back 3 expectations, but I don't see it. I think if I had to make a claim, I think he's a goner.
Okay. And again, the line comes back intact. Definitely some depth is going to be added.
That was the next thing I was going to say. The line. Glad you reminded me. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
You mentioned Bergeron, stud. I've been
for sure
higher on him through the draft and everything. I actually wrote a piece on him being the perfect fit schematically for an Arthur Smith Atlanta offense. That was one of my better calls that draft cycle. I was really excited to see us get him. That's a 2-contract, 3-contract kind of guy. He's not going anywhere. He and Lindstrom, particularly with their youth, I think that's as good a guard pairing as there is in the league. I wouldn't trade it with anybody.
Yep.
And particularly paired with a, Drew Dahlman performed well at center last year, but more of a kind of a cost-efficient rookie contract kind of center who you can really pull and get a lot of mileage out of, paired with that kind of a caliber of guard unit. And no, you're absolutely right. But depth's needed, and this is a strong free agency class on the offensive interior, particularly.
Yep.
And so I think there's definitely going to be some guard additions. You've got to, we'll see what comes of it. I wouldn't expect much in terms of retaining Matt Hennessy, as far as somebody who gives you center and guard snaps. I think that's definitely a spot. Obviously wouldn't imagine offensive interior at 8.
Yeah, no.
Wouldn't imagine it at 43. You did that last year with Bergeron going for a starter. You're looking more for the depth piece, getting into, day 3 probably, some of that, 4th, 5th round action. And there's guys there, particularly just when you need them for depth. I mean, are you kidding me? Coming into a room with Chris Lindstrom and Matt Bergeron, you're not starting, kid. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely an area where I'd like to see us cash in with some youth when it's not necessarily urgent.
That's right. Yeah, perfect opportunity to come in and learn and develop and take your redshirt year and get bigger, get stronger.
Well, hey, you could even kick it out to tackle. I mean, Jake Matthews can't play forever, even though it seems like it. And as a guy who's kind of, that tier below Pro Bowl for a decade kind of player. And, McGarry, somebody you extended, he had a rough year. That's one you're probably going to see that contract out and wish him well back to the Pacific Northwest. But
gotcha.
I say that and sound critical of McGarry to segue into saying there needs to be a swing tackle brought into this room. There needs to be somebody who's the developmental, even if you're not ready to go with that 8th pick or even that 43rd pick. You're sitting there in the 3rd, somebody with some high upside, a developmental, off the top of my head, the kid out of Yale, Kyron Ademoji. That'd be an example of a name of somebody that's, can come in here for a year or two and learn from somebody like Jake Matthews, who's been around the block 100 times. His daddy's been around it 100 times. His uncle,
yep.
But it could be a perfect situation. I think that's one to monitor as well. I am not going to be upset if at 8 and 43, Terry and Raheem just say we can't. For example, if they're at 8 and a Joe Alt's there, I don't think he will be, and they're just like, I can't say no to this guy, I won't be complaining.
Yeah. All right. Well, and that's a good segue into the next conversation before we dive into more of the draft, the 2024 draft cycle and needs and stuff for the Falcons. To me, just that mention makes me think that you're expecting the Falcons, or you want the Falcons to address the quarterback outside of that 1st round. So is that the avenue you're leaning? I mean, the names buzzed around. The names buzzed around are Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields. I even heard some Russell Wilsons. I can't see that really happening, but I'm assuming that's the way you're leaning.
It's funny you say that. You're absolutely wrong.
Okay.
I must have presented that to give you the wrong notion, I'm not going to be upset if we go with a Cousins or we go with Fields. I think they would both be great options. I'd be pleased with both of them. Russ, I'm going to have to take a walk around the block and talk myself off the ledge, but I'm not worried about it because that's not happening. We're swinging bigger than that, and we're not going to get the doomsday that bad. And I'm saying that as a Falcons fan that lived through the Super Bowl. If it's not going to be that big a doomsday. That being said, I'm all team Drake May or team Jaden Daniels. That's for me. Okay. I want to trade up. I have been that way the whole time. I have believed that is what we are going to do the whole time, and I've stood by that from the start, and I still do. Even hearing reports that the Patriots are wanting to bring in a rookie, even if it's developmental. Even hearing reports that Washington's really being, kind of eyeing going to one, wondering what, how that leaves Chicago and how they all fit into that. I'm standing my ground. I think if it doesn't happen that Terry Fontenot gets a Drake May or a Jaden Daniels, whoever the preference of the two is, it's not going to be because they didn't lay it on the table. They're going to gun for it. They're going to go for it, and I'm comfortable in saying that I will know if they look up and say, we've gotten Kirk Cousins, we've gotten Justin Fields, they explored the draft route, because I don't really think there's much of a conversation. They want a rookie. In an ideal situation, in an ideal world, they want one of those two guys. It's a matter of can it happen. And I think you're hearing all these rumors of, the Falcons have reached out concerning Fields, and the Falcons are thinking about Cousins. They'd be stupid not to. It'd be dumb not to be calling Chicago and setting up some, I hate to say backup plans. But
that's exactly what it is. If your goal is let's go, there's guys that we like that we think could be the future of this.
I think Drake May is their guy for perspective. I think Drake May is the best schematic fit with Zach Robinson. I think he is who they've gotten excited about. I think in terms of his draft capital, and who knows? He could be Washington's guy, and they could tell you to kick rocks for all we know. But speculating, he's somebody who feels realistic in terms of trading up for that. If I had to put a Vegas bet on it, I think May's their guy, and I think they're going to take a shot at him.
So, and again, devil's advocate, or not devil's advocate, but let's just hypothetically play this through. Just say it goes Caleb and Jaden Daniels 1 and 2, all right? And you got New England, who of the three, to me, is the most apt to consider a trade down, right? Because they're just starting to rebuild also. And I stand on the hill that says, what good if you're going to start this rebuild, what good is taking the quarterback first when the rest of the foundation ain't built? There's no weapons, there's no line, there's so on and so forth. You just it's a recipe for disaster. So to me, a bridge quarterback, maybe build some more capital, because that's going to be a pretty penny to jump up there, right? I think the Atlanta, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Clint, I think they got an extra third rounder from Jacksonville, correct? So they're working with a 1, a 2, and 2 threes.
Yes, we have the 79th pick from Jacksonville as a part of the Ridley trade.
Correct.
And that's big here. And I think when you look at the teams that we're going to be competing with in that trade up, nobody's got more capital than you. If anything, you're sitting prettier.
Yeah. Sure.
Take, for example, rattling off a couple here. A Denver. I'm convinced J.J. McCarthy is the apple of Sean Payton's eye. They don't have the capital. They don't even have a second rounder, let alone an extra third.
Yeah, I don't think they don't have a fourth rounder either, because we have their fourth rounder.
And they haven't been having some of these first in the. They're not in a position, nor is their roster built out, which they had a more successful season than us. So you could probably tell me you'll laugh at me, but they also have a good head coach, not one that was really struggling. All that said, they don't have the ammo to jump you. To my point of, we're gonna gun for it. Another one, Vegas at 13 is not going to be able to hang with you. Minnesota at 11 is not going to be able to hang with you. That's it. Behind you, I mean, the only person that could hang with you is New York, and I don't think they're in a position to do that with the bed that they have made
with Daniel Jones
that they now have to lie in.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I think if I was a completely, and that's how I covered this team, a completely unbiased viewpoint, you cannot look at this market and not say that Atlanta's not sitting in the best spot. If anyone's going to do it, it's Atlanta.
Yeah, but listen, I think you make a fair point. I think the Giants and Atlanta are probably 1 and 2 in whichever way you want to put it. But the Giants have some extra capital. The Giants don't have to jump up that far, and also the Patriots wouldn't have to drop down as far, so on and so forth. So there's some factors, but yeah, listen, if Atlanta does it or goes for it, more power to you. It'll come at a cost, but if you can hone in on your guy, the cost. It's not a sunken cost. It's a cost that repays itself year after year after year. I mean, look what Buffalo did when they traded up for Josh Allen, right? They completely flipped the franchise over, and they jumped up from the 20s to number 8 or 9, wherever they took them. So it can be done. It has been done in the past.
No, they took him 6th overall, 6th or 7th. You're right.
Yeah, and they jumped up from the 20. So it can be done. It has been done, and when it works, I mean, like I said, you put yourself in a position where the lost capital that you had in the trade kind of pays itself off tenfold. But one more thing about the quarterbacks. Just say, you know what, Atlanta can't work out a deal with New England. They're dead set in taking the quarterback, and 3 go off, 1, 2, 3. Are you on board with a McCarthy or with whoever your personal quarterback for is? Mine happens to be McCarthy. Some people like Penix a little better. There's some Knicks fans out there. Are you okay with sitting there and taking that, or do you think that the value of the other positions, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where you probably won't see it, you might see one defensive guy maybe go in the top 7 picks, maybe. Would you kind of pivot off that quarterback and look into that second round, maybe take that second tier, third tier guy? How would you approach that?
They won't be, as in Terry Fontenot, they won't be in a position to be that bold if they find themselves in it. And by that, I mean, to your question of, could you wait till that 43rd pick and try and maybe see if a Michael Penix has fallen to you?
Uh-huh.
See, they would not be in a position to be that bold. And hey, let's get real. We say that in this conversation like we're assuming McCarthy's there at 8.
Yeah, true. That's fair.
For all we know, he's gone by 8. Personally, I don't think McCarthy lines up with Atlanta's window right now. I think it's a little more would like someone ready to put their foot on the gas right now.
Yeah.
I think also going back to the comment I made earlier today about Arthur Blank not really being in a position to do something that creates a bunch of angst in this fan base. This fan base will not be excited about McCarthy. With respect to McCarthy, I have McCarthy as my QB4. I think McCarthy's closer to QB3 than QB5. So I'm very comfortable with him at QB4. That's his floor for me in this draft process. I don't think it's the right fit for him versus, if I was sitting here and I was a Minnesota fan, I'd be thrilled. If I was sitting here and I was a Denver fan, I'd be thrilled. If I was sitting here and I was a Vegas fan, I'd be thrilled. I don't think it's the right fit for him, and I don't think that's who we will gun for. I think you're going to see it here in terms of, when the Cousins domino falls and the Fields domino falls, because that's going to be the only 2 veterans they're interested in or have as a backup backup option. You're going to see these dominoes fall because it's like you're not going to have to be a draft geek or an analyst or whatever you want to title yourself to know if Justin Fields goes somewhere other than Atlanta and Kirk Cousins goes somewhere other than Atlanta, aka stays in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. You don't really have to be a rocket scientist to know what Atlanta's doing in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's to my point earlier about Terry Fontenot like to put himself in positions with his current personnel to really be best player available in the draft. It's going to be pretty tough because, let's get real. I mean, this is how I view it. I've got Caleb tier. I think May and Daniels are in the same tier, drop tier. McCarthy, not a big drop to McCarthy, not a big drop. But tier, McCarthy, other tier, then I'm talking the Penix, Bo Nix category of guys. But I mean, those you're starting to get some tier drops there. If you look up
Sure.
and Penix and Nix didn't make it to you at 43,
Yeah.
you're falling hard to Spencer Rattler there. And this fan base would not be excited about.
Yeah, you would think if that, just say it worked out and they, I'm just going to throw a name out. Just say they went Jared Verse at 8 for argument's sake here. I don't think you're sitting at 4-3 crossing your fingers that next tier of guys, the Penix, Nix, Rattler, whichever way you have them fall to you.
I think the perfect point to add to that is you already did that.
Yeah.
You already did that with the Ritter play. Oh, we're going to draft this guy 74th overall in the 3rd round. We're going to bring him in here, give him a little bit of time behind a Mariota and a bridge quarterback, see what we've got here, and then you fall flat on your face and waste a year to win the division. Back to the point I've made twice about you're not in a place with this fan base. You're not in a place with this fan base for the day 2 quarterback that we – think we can develop. You've done that. And I would say this, I'm obviously not in those conversations between Arthur Blank and Terry Fontenot in terms of his job security, but I also have covered Terry Fontenot enough at this point that I think he is a bright man. And I think he's bright enough to know he gets this one right or he's hitting the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's not putting himself in a position to, we'll see if we can land on the day 2 guy. No, he's either about to go and get a deal done here soon and get to the 2nd or 3rd pick, or he's going to look up and say, I can't pull this off. I've got to go with Cousins or Fields, and I've got to go ahead and I got to have this one in the hand, not in the bush.
Yeah.
And now he's going to pull the trigger.
Cool. Before we touch on some more draft stuff, and we're going to do a 4-round mock with you guys. Again, if you're just tuning in, Clint Goss, Falcons radio show host for WDJY 99.1 FM, also writes for Stadium Rant, does a great job over there. We're going to get into a 4-round mock with the Falcons being Clint. Clint's going to kind of navigate. I'm just going to push buttons, but obviously we talked about it. Clint, quarterback is in terms of needs, positional needs here for the Falcons. Quarterback sits at 1. Then you got a tier, then you got wide receivers. We talked about those too. I don't want to speak for you. Obviously, we know quarterback's your biggest need. How do you gauge positionally from next to last in which way they got to go in matter of importance and fill in this roster? You're muted.
You say that in terms of what would be like the 2nd and 3rd need beyond quarterback?
Correct.
Yeah, pass rusher is an obvious one, and that's kind of a draft time of year tradition at this point for us. Is saying that it's kind of like saying, oh, Joe Burrow needs some protection. Oh, that's sweet. It's that time of year. Oh, the Falcons need pass rush. Oh, that's sweet. It's that time of year.
Yeah.
For example. That's an obvious one. That performance that Dallas Turner laid down yesterday. And I think with this 3-4 defense and kind of what you can imagine looking at that, Rams defense that Raheem has headed for the last 3 years and kind of his characteristics, Turner would be the guy there. I like Verse just about as much. I think Turner would be the pick and he'd be fantastic. And particularly as he's from Georgia, that'd be a great fit. And him testing like an absolute freak yesterday. But moving past edge and pass rusher, a corner 2 that's really starting caliber could be nice as well. My jaw would not hit the floor if they fell in love with corner 1. I don't think it'll happen, but my jaw wouldn't hit the floor if they said, man, we fell in love with Terrion Arnold. Man, we fell in love with Quinyon Mitchell. But that's one that's definitely to look at, and
listen, Raheem Morris did a lot with not a very on the defensive backfield especially. Those Rams, after they traded what's his face, why can't I think of his name, to Miami? give me the cornerback over there.
Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey. Thank you very much. After they traded Jalen Ramsey, I mean, he's been working with not the, like, kind of like cookie cutter guys over there. And he obviously, schemes them, puts them in right places.
If this was a Rams show we were doing right now, and you asked me the draft take on that, what would I be telling you the needs were? They got to have a pass rusher. They got to have some corner. They got to have some help in the secondary.
Yeah.
Their entire defense needs talent upgrades. Yes, you got a ton of mileage out of a Kobe Turner. Yes, you got a ton of mileage out of a Byron Young. You don't have Raw in that room. Yes, those guys are great players, but you can't bank on hitting on day 2s and day 3s that hard early.
Yeah, for sure.
They've got to get talent in that room. I mean, if I was a fan of theirs, I'd be pulling for an edge rusher myself there at 19 where they're picking.
Yeah, but I'm tying that into what Raheem Morris did over there. Like, he got the most out of the second and third tier kind of players. So the Falcons aren't like, they're not desolate. Yeah, they're not destitute over there in the defensive backfield. I mean, AJ Terrell is as good as anybody in this league. He's right up there with the elite tier, in my opinion. Like I said, you spoke a pound of compliments about Jesse Bates. So there's pieces that are there right now. I'm just wondering if, like you said, if some of those other needs that to find that other, or to seek that pass rusher kind of takes precedence to maybe cornerback 2, or maybe you find, a guy that can play the 5 tech or in that odd man front to eventually step in for Calais Campbell in, Byron Murphy. I'm just throwing names out here. You know what I mean? To me, again, from the outside looking in, without having the in-depth knowledge of the roster like you, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing, okay, I see what Raheem did with, less than stellar talent in the defensive backfield in the Rams. The talent here is already better than that. So I'm not even worried about that right now. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not Terry Fontenot. I'm not, my finger's not on the pulse, but that's just the way my mind goes. But let's see where your mind goes. Let's go ahead and bring up this 4-round mock draft. Let me go ahead and share this. And here we go, brother. Can you see that all right? Yep.
Yes.
All right. So, like I said, we're going to do 4 rounds. Nice and quick. I'll let you entertain anything that comes our way in regards to trade. That's your choice. This is your draft, my friend. This is your draft. So, you want to trade, you say the word. You want to work up into that number 3 like you talked about, you say the word, and I'll make it happen.
Well, I think you got to pick one or the other, particularly because, let's say we do trading up for the quarterback, you're probably going to lose that second rounder that we had.
Let's just say Kirk Cousins, to make it easier. Kirk Cousins.
I agree. Let's say for this exercise, let's do the scenario of you went with a Fields or a Cousins, and Chicago, Washington, and New England slammed the door in your face.
Yeah. Okay. So Kirk Cousins is your quarterback, Clint. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. I'm assuming you're not going to trade up for anything else other than a quarterback. So we're going to let this ride. And here you go, my friend. And the board went 3 quarterbacks, or no, went two quarterbacks, 2 receivers. This is kind of, for the most part, Cooper DeJean's too high.
I was going to say, how about this? If this was real, we'd be taking Jaden Daniels.
Yeah. It's a simulator. We got to understand how that works.
Jaden Daniels is not there because he's not going to be there.
Yeah,
this isn't a conversation for me. You're taking Dallas Turner. I think the way he tested yesterday, the edge need, I think the schematic fit in a Jimmy Lake 3-4, and kind of what you see characteristically of kind of that pass rusher, outside backer for a Sean McVay defense. I think it's just a perfect fit. He's from Georgia. He played at Alabama, got that familiarity with the South, and just kind of the football brand around here. And it would just be a day 1 fit. And, in terms of a talent upgrade, I mean, yeah, buddy, that one's blatant. And I think that's a run the card in kind of situation. And, as a media member, as a fan, et cetera, et cetera. We've wanted that pass rusher. We've wanted that pass rusher. This kid can be that.
Yeah. So interesting. We didn't talk about Jimmy Lake at all. He came from Jacksonville, correct?
He came over from the Rams as well.
Oh, he did. I thought he could. Oh, you know what
He
it was?
the assistant head.
No. I had it backwards. The former Falcons DC went to Jacksonville, if I'm not mistaken.
Ryan Nielsen is now the new coordinator in Jacksonville. Yes.
Yes, I knew that. So I knew that there was a connection there. I didn't know which way it came. So again, the Rams kind of infiltrated for these new Falcons coaches. And listen, the schemes worked, right? The Rams, the Rams did a lot with a little on defense. They got production out of these guys. These Kobe Turners and even on offense, the Puka Nakuas, we saw what they were able to, find diamonds in the rough all throughout the draft. That's fine if you find a diamond in the rough, but you also got to be able to coach them and develop these guys. So kudos on you for dipping into a really warm pond, that is. All right, so we took Dallas Turner, man. I would make the same play. Like I said, with the scenario that we're hammering out, I think he's probably going to arguably be the first edge off the board. And then we saw how the rest of the board fell. I'll pull up what position you thinking here?
Let's see that. Yeah, let's see the receiver board.
Go ahead.
Roman Wilson's my guy there, man. I know if you looked at the big board, go back to the big board before you click.
Sure, you got it.
You might argue with me some names like a Chop Robinson, a Darius Robinson, a Kingsley Somatea.
Yeah, but those guys are depth, and like you said, with you in the need for wide receiver, not only depth but guys that can come in and affect. Listen, I think you can make an argument for Kamari Lassiter. I think
absolutely.
I think you can make a fair and a good cornerback too. But with all the holes in the wide receiver, if Roman Wilson
it's
whatever,
Roman Wilson for me. I think Atlanta's a dream fit for him schematically and his strengths. We're putting him in that slot role starting day one.
Yeah.
And he's that's a little bit of a draft fit crush, if you will. If he's there, I like that one a lot. Darius Robinson, you could argue with me, he's a guy getting in some late round one discussions. But considering I just went with the pass rushing and, he and Dallas Turner are obviously very different players, but that would make me teeter too. I think I got to go with Roman Wilson. I just think that's a perfect fit. And you're looking up 2 picks in, and you've gotten 2 slam dunk, surefire starters day one.
Yeah. So which area are you looking at now?
Okay, let me look for a second. Malachi Corley would have been nice if I hadn't have gone. Mm-hmm. Brendan Rice would have been nice. You had some. So, in hindsight, you had some nice slots there in the third. Patrick Paul's nice as that swing tackle I talked about.
Brandon Dorlus could be a nice little developmental guy behind Calais Campbell too. I think a 5 tech is going to be his comfort spot in that odd man, that end on an odd man front.
As well, particularly after he came in a little lighter at the Senior Bowl than expected. Correct. Show a corner board.
Yes, sir. Now, what's the scheme that the new DC runs? I mean, more man-based, more off, more zone. Because if you're a man-based team, this kid Jarvis Brown, let me tell you, he is sticky. I saw him in Mobile head up, and then I got into his film
and here's a reminder we need to mention. You're coming right back in what?
5 spots.
5 spots.
Correct.
Go back to the big board one more time.
Yes, sir.
Release. It's who do you think won't be there? Who do you think's gone?
You got some depth. You got some good line depth here also.
I was going to say, I'll tell you who I'm going to take there. I'm going to go Patrick Paul.
Yeah.
As a developmental swing tackle. I think
like
that's somebody who's getting some real buzz as a second rounder potentially. I think that's a good value. Are there some other names on that board? I like Dorlus. We already went with a pass rusher. I like Corley and Rice, but we just went with that in the second round. I'm not going to double up with other needs. And I like Paul in terms of potential upside. I talked about that before we even started the mock about a potential swing. The corners there don't excite me enough. I think the value would be better on Paul.
Yeah.
And I don't think he'd be there 5 picks from now.
Yeah, and this might be a good landing spot for him too. I mean, he could go earlier. I mean, somebody might like the traits and so on and so forth. I mean, he's got it. I don't think he's nearly ready. I think he's not plug and play. So you're talking a team that can afford to use a second round pick on a developmental guy to sit and learn, or he's going to tumble, and this could be a good landing spot for him. In top of the third, middle of the third area. So, but you're right back on the clock here at 79. Which way you leaning?
Scroll down a little bit. I might be doubling up at receiver because I just, oh man, one of my guys is there. Oh Lord,
who's that?
I got to take Marshawn Nealon. That is my guy.
Marshawn Nealon. He tested out of this world as well, man.
Marshawn Nealon and Sion Vaki are my guys in this entire class. Nealon, I have to go there. I don't even care if I don't even want to see the corner board. That'd be a guy I would just have to say, look, we're sitting here in the third round. We're betting on traits. We're betting on upside.
Yeah.
Going back to the last draft, our third round pick, Zach Harrison, last year was a major hit.
Yep.
I think this is that kind of pick where you can look up next year and you say, man, that was a major hit there at 79. And you really cashed in on that Ridley pick and got a lot of mileage out of it. I love that. I said how he's my guy in this class. And in 2022, Arnold Ebiketie was my guy.
Oh, look at that.
And the Falcons took him. That'd be a similar situation where I'd be buzzing.
Yeah. Well, we're still here in our last pick for the fourth round. And you spoke about your guy.
Run it in. Wait, I'll cut you off right now.
Ahead.
Max Melton is the pick. It's over. That's easy.
Another guy who tested out, but one of my favorites, Cam Hart, who just went there. That's who I was going to touch on. He's my guy. I think
Hart would have been a fantastic option as well. He could have been the other
6'3", loose hips, not scheme specific. You want him to press up, you want him to play off. Physical at the point of attack, physical.
Well, and I'll tell you too, you very well could have made a good point. Hell, in hindsight, I should have taken Hart because you mentioned Terrell, and I think Terrell is a very good corner. I don't think he's a top 5 guy or an elite guy, but I think he's a very good corner. But, that's like last year. I felt like we got a little more success kind of playing more of a Jeff Okudah on some of the more big physical opposing receivers. Hart would be a good one there in terms of somebody that's, versus a Terrell who's, kind of about $190. Hart is a legit, well-built 205 kind of player.
And he's solid. Too. Yeah,
he's solid, well-built, and that guy can run downhill. You're right. I mean, if we look back in hindsight, we could change one. It very well might be that Hart might have been the good pick there, but no doubt.
Yeah, Melton's a pretty good consolation, though. I mean, he tested today out of this world. So
that 110 spot was no doubt the corner value was there. I mean, in hindsight here, if you told me that was our 5 picks, I'd be drinking in a good way that night because that's a homer. That's an absolute homer. And I know that Paul's probably the quote-unquote kind of bold because it might not be the immediate need. But, man, that's a high upside in the third round to take a shot.
Yeah, listen, you can make the argument that Nealon probably won't be there at the top of 3. He might have tested.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned that actually because I meant to say that when we took the pick.
But this is the cards that we were dealt. You know what I mean? He
played himself. I thought I was bold having him as my guy and having him as number 60 on my first board. I think he played himself. I think he played himself into a second round pick, and I think he can sniff being a top 50 pick. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. So, listen, I think you said it yourself. If the Falcons came away in the first 4 rounds with this draft board, plus Kirk Cousins, plus whatever they do in free agency, I mean, sky's the limit. The Falcons are in a good place, man, and I'm happy for you guys. Because it seems like the puzzle is kind of finally making its way and coming to light. I think that NFC South is ripe for the taking. And the talent that's already established on the team, plus, a new vision, a new culture brought in by these young coaches, poached from the Rams, tied in with hopefully your quarterback of the future or your quarterback for now in one of these veteran guys. I think sky's the limit, man. The future's looking bright for the Atlanta Falcons. So, man, that was a quick hour, Clint. Why don't you go ahead and tell everyone again, real quick? Everything's gonna be, all the links to Clint stuff will be in the link below. But go ahead and tell everyone where you're at.
Yeah, you can find most of my activity on Twitter, X. I'm real active there, particularly this time of year. I'm year round with the draft. That's my specialty. Um, I probably currently have more headway and success with the Falcons coverage, but really my real love is with the draft. So you can find me at NFL Draft Dome on Twitter, doing a lot of NFL coverage and draft coverage year round. I do the majority of my writing at Stadium Rant. They're also who I work in unison with WDJY as far as the radio show at 99.1. That's weekly with me and Jordan Watkins covering the team, and we're having a lot of success there. I'd love to have as many listeners as possible. I think a lot to learn on that show, even if you don't cover the Falcons or follow the Falcons, because I say that to tie it back into you talking about this team being in a good spot. There's zero excuse for this team not to win the South next year, particularly if you make some moves caliber of what we discussed in this episode. And that's why Arthur Smith got canned, because there's no excuse for this team not to win the South at least and take that next step. And that's the expectation. And, lastly, if I looked back going into this episode, something I thought to mention that we didn't, and we really hit on it well, I would just say that this staff is a great balance of the retentions from the previous and kind of the rougher times, and bringing in people who are more positive times and kind of different experiences. And this team we make the joke, if it was a drinking game, for every time the Falcons use the word collaboration, we'd all be on the floor. I say that to say what they're selling to us, they're doing. This is a collaborative staff. They're heading into free agency with a lot of opportunities to go after big names like a L'Jarius Sneed or a Bryce Huff, or maybe some more, I hate to say discount names, but like a Leonard Floyd, like a Jeremy Chin, the big Kirk Cousins is a big name. Going into the draft, I thought it was funny, and this is the last thing I'd say. I did a little mock draft before you and I did this one, just of like a little perfect scenario. 3 of the guys I put on there we took.
How about
Dallas Turner, Roman Wilson, Max Melton. Just thought that was kind of interesting, that I think that's a really good picture of what this team could be looking at. A team who's going to be sniffing about $50+ million in cap space, and it's all there for the moves to be made for this team and Terry Fontenot.
Yeah. Well, listen, as a Falcons fan, I wish you nothing but success this coming year. And listen, I wish you nothing but success in your ventures on 99.1 and with Stadium Rant, man. Guys, go ahead and give Clint the follow on Twitter. Again, it's at NFL Dome. Is that correct?
NFL Draft Dome, but you can search my name, Clint Goss. It's on there.
Awesome, Clint. Well, listen, I had a blast. This was, a really fast hour. I appreciate you taking the time to come on my show. And again, I hope to have you on again. Like, listen.
Would love to. I was about to say I'd love to come back and do any Falcons discussion or draft discussion, any of it. This was a great hour for me as well. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, again, that's our State of the Franchise, Atlanta Falcons. If you haven't subbed up, please do. At Project Prospect with Dom C on YouTube. Hit the bell, hit the like. Be notified when we come on. It helps me get the stuff out to more masses. Get in the comments. Tell me, Falcons fans, I'm asking you. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. Tell me what you agreed with Clint on. Tell me what you didn't agree on. It's all good. We want communication back and forth. That's why I keep putting out this content. So, again, that's the state of the Atlanta Falcons. Arrows pointing up, guys. Good on you. Until next time, I'm Dom C of Project Prospect. We'll talk to you soon.